The Infinite. By Melissa Delport. The dark ripple of stagnant water was all the warning Sir Oswald James III got before a rat scurried over his shoe. His voice was a high-pitched yelp in the dark.
Son of a bitch!
He kicked at nothing but air, the rat already having scampered to safety.
What do they feed these blasted vermin?
Shit. And the carcasses of those less fortunate, drawled the man who set the pace beside Oswald. Come on now, Oz. Don't tell me you're afraid of a rodent.
Where there's one, there are many, Sawyer.
Oz grumbled, but he picked up the pace, drawing closer to his companion.
How much further?
Sawyer didn't pause to regard their surroundings. Swift and sure-footed, he kept his head down and answered immediately. We're almost there. Water trickled from the sewer walls, gleamed emerald in the torchlight, and sloshed ankle-deep around their feet. The curved stone ceiling was so low that Oz could reach up a hand and touch it. Sawyer, who stood at least a head taller, had to stoop to avoid braining himself.
How long have you known him?
Oz asked after a short silence. It was a loaded question, and Sawyer's teeth flashed. Long enough. It was all the answer Oz would get. You should know that you won't get more than a year's worth with whatever you have in there. He waved his hand toward the dark leather briefcase gripped in Oz's pudgy right hand.
A year's worth? There's over $500,000 in here.
Sawyer shrugged. 6 months, then. Even in the dim light, broken only by the dull cast of the fluorescent bulbs spaced 50 yards apart, Sawyer could make out the deep red flush that rose from Oz's neck and seeped into his cheeks. It's time, Oz. It's priceless. $500,000 is hardly a king's ransom. Quivering with indignation, Oz demanded,
What am I going to do with 6 months?
Find yourself a new whore. Buy another Ferrari, perhaps yellow this time. Hell, Oz, how should I know? I don't know what rich people do with their time. And adding 6 months to your life isn't exactly something you can buy online. You should try to be a little more grateful. The vestige of smoke and the sweet smell of sizzling flesh hung in the air, almost masking the putrid tang of decomposition. Almost, but not quite. Sawyer's head pricked up as that scent assailed him. Oz clapped a hand over his mouth.
What in God's name?
Shut up, Sawyer growled. The deadpan expression was gone. If Oz didn't know better, he would swear that Sawyer was frightened. Only Sawyer wasn't afraid of anything. Oz's mouth snapped shut. Sawyer was still moving forward, but more carefully now, his soft-soled leather shoes barely leaving a ripple. Oz shuffled behind him, the thunder of his own heartbeat in his ears, drowning out the splashing sounds of his heavy gait. For the first time in his life, Oswald cursed the custom-made Italian leather shoes he ordered by the dozen, with the built-in step that made him appear half an inch taller than he was. That half inch placed his eyes level with the chest of almost every woman at the Curvy Lady, a whorehouse that Oz frequented 4 times a week, Monday through Thursday, while he resided at his apartment in the city. At the weekend, Oz left the shoes off and still towered over his 5-foot wife, Miriam, who, left to her own devices, ate far too much creme brulee and was in grave danger of becoming as wide as she was tall. Another wave of the foul stench hit them, and Oz gagged. For the first time, he seriously contemplated turning back.
What in the blazes?
He trailed off as Sawyer threw out a hand to stop him. Too late, the silver blur of a blade whizzed past Sawyer's head. It flipped end over end until it came to a stop, buried in Oz's chest. The portly man gave a tiny oomph of surprise before toppling face first into the water. Was that really necessary? Sawyer growled at the slim figure, which detached from the shadows ahead and walked toward him. Valentina Garcia, more wraith than woman, stopped to retrieve her blade from Oz's chest with a squelch and a grunt of effort, before fixing Sawyer in a black-eyed glare. No tears marked her fierce face, but a sense of infinite sadness resonated from her, That otherworldly smell washed over Sawyer once more. His head snapped to the left as he peered through the gloom. "What happened?" he demanded. Valentina didn't reply. With a slight wave of her hand, she gestured him to follow as she turned back the way she had come. Slowly, the water receded. The floor began to change beneath their feet, grimy concrete giving way to smooth, unstained marble. As Sawyer passed through the barrier, the soft glow of candlelight bathed him in gold. The tunnel opened into a cavernous space, completely at odds with the depressing filth of the sewer. The Hall of the Infinite, or at least it had been. It was magnificent, but Sawyer had eyes only for the shriveled corpse in the center of the room. A few long strides, and he was crouched over it. "What the hell happened?" His voice was a rough croak.
Somebody got to him.
Valentina had joined Sawyer. She reached out a hand and stroked the withered gray cheek. The Infinite was dead, and judging by the state of his body, his assassin had taken more than just his life. Until right now, the murdered man on the floor between them had looked no more than 30 years old, but he was, in fact, ancient. Older than the myths which had followed him through centuries, the Infinite held immeasurable time within his powerful form, and for those who served him, he granted favor. Immortality. Sawyer had already lived 13 lives, Valentina far more than that. Even though he knew what he would find, Sawyer lifted the Infinite's arm, grimacing at the creak of bone. The golden panel which had glowed on his wrist was black, lifeless as the body it adorned. Valentina didn't miss the brief glance he cast at her own wrist.
You dare.
She hissed, furious.
You think I would murder my own father?
I think that it would take an exceptionally skilled warrior to have even got close enough to try. It was the only apology he would offer, veiled in an implied compliment.
There are only 5 of us left.
Her words were weighted with implication. Valentina, Sawyer, Davis, Lucian, Fenella, the immortal quintet. 5 people who had been selected over the course of history by the Infinite himself. His children, he called them, although Valentina was his only true biological child. A prodigy born of a physical human union, as brief as it was meaningless. Valentina had inherited her mother's name, along with her Hispanic looks. She was the eldest by an age. Lucian and Davis, known as the twins because they were chosen during the same decade, came next, followed by Sawyer. Fenella was the youngest. She had lived a little over 500 years. My baby sister, Sawyer, liked to call her, until she'd stuck a dagger in his back for the teasing.
Fenella didn't do this,
Valentina snapped, reading Sawyer's thoughts.
She might be a sadistic bitch, but she loved him.
As far as I know, Lucian and Davis haven't set foot out of Brazil since Carnival began. Valentina's sharp teeth tugged at her bottom lip. Sawyer averted his eyes. It's only Tuesday, he continued gruffly. They won't be done until noon tomorrow.
Unless they lied,
Valentina pointed out.
in which case they might never have left the U.S.
There's one way to find out. Posthumously, Oz paid for the 2 return tickets to Rio de Janeiro. Sawyer and Valentina arrived just before noon on the busiest day of the year and stepped out of the plane into a veritable furnace. Valentina, with her Mediterranean heritage, embraced it as they made their way via taxi toward the Sambadrome. Sawyer simply stripped off his expensive jacket and rolled up his sleeves. The heat wave was the least of their worries. All around were signs of the heavy police presence tasked with maintaining the peace.
I hate this blasted festival,
Valentina griped as they exited the taxi, her eyes scanning the crowds. Those are riot control police, Sawyer soothed. They're looking for crowd clashes, so just keep your head down and don't talk to anyone. With your sparkling personality, you'd probably attract a lynch mob. They walked for over an hour under a baking sun, which did nothing to improve Valentina's mood. Doesn't Davis usually stay at the Copacabana? Sawyer ventured after a while. But Valentina wasn't listening. She was watching a wiry man in a donkey mask who scampered through the throng, pilfering wallets and watches from unsuspecting victims. Valentina heaved a weary sigh.
I really do hate this festival,
She echoed, before darting after the thief. Davis Jackson loathed his older sister, his younger sister too, but right now, Valentina was definitely the greater of two evils. Davis was no easy target, but Valentina had centuries on him, and a vicious temper to match. By the time Sawyer reached them, she'd already landed 4 brutal blows to his gut, which threatened to bring out the 3 days' worth of Brazilian beer that churned inside it.
Call off your dog.
Davis managed to wheeze between bruised ribs. She's not mine, Sawyer replied calmly, even as Valentina growled like a rabid animal.
You've spent too long underground.
Davis taunted.
You've forgotten how to be civilized.
You're walking around in a skirt made entirely of peacock feathers, Sawyer quipped. And considering the gray that streaked your hair the last time we met has vanished, I'd wager you've spent some time underground recently yourself. Davis's teeth flashed.
I might let it grow back. The ladies loved it.
Valentina bristled. Sensing another brawl becoming imminent, Sawyer changed the subject. Davis's wrist was bare, save for a solitary leather strap and a smudged telephone number, which could belong to any of the hundreds of thousands of women attending Carnival. Where is Lucian? Something like fear flashed in Davis's bloodshot eyes.
Around here somewhere. Last I saw, he was chasing after one of the samba dancers. I think her mother's been looking for her.
His flippancy was all for show. Davis was nervous. The Infinite is dead, Sawyer announced, almost casually. At the words, all the blood drained from Davis's face.
which means
Valentina taunted.
that you'll need to get used to that gray, because whoever killed him took every single second of his time.
That's not possible.
Fear for his own mortality rather than grief for the loss of his father figure. Fear, clear as day. Valentina turned on her heel.
He didn't do it.
Sawyer was inclined to agree. Where is Lucian? He repeated. Cold realization swept over Davis.
He didn't do it either. He's been with me the entire week.
And yet he's not with you. Now.
This cast over Valentina's departing shoulder. In the end, it didn't take long to track Lucian down. A man with a slit throat couldn't venture very far, and Lucian lay face down in a small terraced courtyard outside his hotel room. There was no doubt about who did it either. Fenella was still standing over his lifeless body, her dagger slick with blood. "What have you done?" Sawyer demanded, but Fenella didn't hear him over Davis's howl of despair. As his adoptive brother slumped to the ground, splashing the contents of his stomach over the terracotta flagstone, Sawyer took a menacing step toward Fen.
I went to the hall.
She announced, utterly unintimidated.
The Infinite is dead.
And you think Lucien killed him?
Valentina asked, curious. Fen gave Lucian's body a dispassionate glance.
He didn't.
How can you be sure?
Because if he had, I wouldn't be standing around here waiting for you to take the time from me.
Every one of them had, at some moment in their overlong lives, considered what would happen if ever the Infinite ceased to exist, if the fragile bonds that bound them together would hold. Lucien's warm corpse was proof that they wouldn't.
And now it's just the 4 of us left.
Fen added, a threat, thinly veiled.
It wasn't Sawyer and it wasn't me.
Valentina said.
And considering the fact that Davis has been here in Brazil, show me your wrists, Fen.
Fen arched one perfect black brow. Her beauty and her cruelty had grown in perfect synchronization since the Infinite found her at 16, working in a brothel in Edinburgh. He had offered her immortality. She had offered him something else in return. Slowly, Fen sheathed her dagger and shook out her wrists. With exaggerated movements, she raised first one sleeve and then the other. Her wrists were bare. Sawyer's eyes met Valentina's. That's not possible. Davis was still sobbing, unaware or uncaring of the chaos unfolding around him.
Who else could have done it?
Valentina asked, her tone a blend of cold fury and a thirst for vengeance.
No one else could have overpowered him.
No one else could wield his time either.
Fen pointed out.
That much time for an infant body would rip it to shreds.
Infants, that was how they viewed the rest of humanity. Barely born, and then they were gone. A fleeting, insignificant life. At Sawyer's feet, Davis mewled like a kitten.
It's gone. We're all going to die.
Pull yourself together, Davis. Together, Sawyer and Valentina hustled him inside and deposited him on Lucian's king-sized hotel bed.
Leave him.
Valentina said, when Sawyer hesitated at his side.
He'll snap out of it eventually.
The click of her heels receded as she left to meet Fen at the bar. Sawyer allowed himself a moment of sympathy. Are you all right? Davis's eyes were still bloodshot, but dark hollows had settled beneath them.
They're going to kill me, Sawyer.
He was resigned, almost hopeful. When Sawyer spoke, his words were laden with kindness. No, they're not. With a cobra's strike, honed to perfection by years of training, Sawyer grabbed Davis's head and snapped his neck. Davis's life was over. He would not survive this world without Lucian, and his sisters would not have made it so peaceful. It was the only honor he could think to give. Sawyer propped up the pillows beneath Davis's head and tucked the sheets around his body. Then he straightened his shirt, rolled down his sleeves, and went to find the others. Valentina and Fen sat in a quiet corner of the hotel bar. A bottle of champagne lay opened on ice, but the twin flutes on the table had not been touched. Sawyer ignored them, choosing a seat at the bar instead. A beer, please, he told the barman. He would leave his sisters to it. He didn't have long to wait. Twisting the half-full flute of champagne in her hands, Fen took the seat beside him, her coral lips curved into a wicked smile. As she shifted, her skirt fell open, revealing a long length of lean, tanned thigh. The barman gaped. Sawyer's lips tightened. Behind them, slouched in the expensive leather booth, Valentina's lips blued.
Where is it?
Fen murmured, laying a hand boldly on Sawyer's thigh. Sawyer set down his beer. Turning toward her, he slowly undid his top 4 buttons, then pulled his shirt aside to reveal the golden panel which danced over his heart. Fen took a sip of her champagne and leaned toward him, letting him drink from her mouth.
I hope the old bastard suffered.
She breathed against his lips. Sawyer shrugged. The Infinite had always been a parsimonious prick, keeping Sawyer on a tight leash. He had forbidden Sawyer selling time, and when he'd discovered him doing it anyway, he had become so frugal that Sawyer had had to start selling his own. Fen had dyed the gray from his hair, but as his brow creased and the lines around his eyes deepened, the Infinite had become suspicious. Now, he had no meddling siblings to worry about, and enough buyers lined up to keep him and Fen in diamonds, no matter how long they lived. Although, he mused, looking down at her cruel, lascivious face, Fen might not live that long after all.